So, you know, when you're looking at and so this is why it's important, even though it's very mundane in a sense, for people to shed their whole concept of what they thought hell was, and understand all of their problems been coming from these people that they thought was government, that the government, the people that they called their government, was actually a coven of dark priests, and that's a fact. However, the elements and the symbolisms that were often used are not necessarily negative. They were just simply misrepresented and made negative. And you can look at it even harmonic with the very problem, like where African people are also referred to as people of the sun, where we're harmonic with the sun, and you find that some hybrids are absolutely the opposite. And so you can kind of comprehend in the nature of things how some paleoliths, where you love the sun, they hate the sun. Just the circumstance of the biology. And when you see the cultivation around those things, you don't justify, but you can understand the mentality, distinctions. And this is another reason why a lot of our people sometimes don't understand the reasoning of the heterogeneous hybrid in their dealings with humanity and the sun. How come they put poison in the air? How come they're trying to block the sun? Duh. Sun trying to kill them? Duh. I mean, that's not a defense, but you have to kind of understand they have a different outlook, many of them, in the atmosphere of Midgard. Why? Because the hybrid it is not a original hybrid, heterogeneous hybrid specifically, an Ingla man or Paleolith or troglodyte nigger is a mixing of by scientific method, not by some other accidental circumstance necessarily, of two different species to create another species. And so you have what you call a species of humanity in purgatory, an alchemical or alchemy purgatory. And you will call that species Roman. And this will be talked about in the Genesis, where the red, ruddy, hairy one, because red, ruddy, that's what Roman means. Roman means red, ruddy. So the red man is really the Paleolith. That's why you see them start calling the Bantu Moors tribes and Naga tribes of North America, red man type thing. No, the red man is the Paleolith. It's not a negative. It's just you got to really know the origin of a lot of these sociological terms that we assume to be one thing. They're not necessarily what you thought they were. And it's not to be misused. It's to be looked at, comprehended, overstood, understood, understood, so we can start, trying to bring some harmony back here. This is again why the treaties were put in place. We're trying to, stop all this confusion. But in the process, you can't hide the truth and fix things. You can't fix things with a lie. Just the truth.
Waiting for more questions.
Hmm?
I'm looking at more comments than questions. Let me say. There was one person said they had received 3 checks, but they hadn't cashed any of them. 3 of the, I guess, the checks from the
Who's that?
stimulus.
Oh yeah.
I remember seeing it.
Well, I'm telling you, they're coming from the executor's chamber. And that as a matter of fact, that's where you get the word check from executor. So even in the everyday operations that people have assumed to be one thing, it isn't what you think it is. And for those, if you want to look in ancient Iberia, um, and look at the structure of government, that has much to do with what you're dealing with now, of how they contaminate, say, right now you see democracies, and you see um, monarchy, etc. So look at heptarchy. So when you look at heptarchy, you're looking more of original structures, what we talked about, where your provinces were broken up into your different tribal and nation systems of 7 parts in harmony with Saba culture or Sabian Moorish culture, because so much of everything dealing on 7 in the cycles of life was always constructed into our social structure. That's why 7 has always been so important, numerically, within Asiatic African culture.
Now, when you look up the definition of that, it says it's a noun, plural, heptarchies, often initial cap letters. The 7 principal concurrent Anglo-Saxon kingdoms supposed to have existed in the 7th.
Supposed,
supposed to have existed in the 7th and 8th centuries. Government by 7 persons, an allied group of 7 states or kingdom, each under its own ruler.
And now what you have, so now when you look at the Picts and the Moors and the Dubs, you have to put it in perspective, because when people are looking at Iberia now, in these days, and Phoenicia, which are now known as Europe, their mind is always usually projected to the heterogeneous hybrid or the hybrid Europeans, because of the operations in these last few hundred years. So when they're looking at Iberia, their mind doesn't immediately run to Africa, although they're dealing with Africa still. You see the problem? This is why, again, and for those of you who already know, because I know most of you who come here, we're telling you stuff you already know, truthfully. What we're trying to do is kind of bring some harmony among us all, so that the people that are reawakening on the planet can burn less energy on useless games, useless organizational structures, or structures that are designed to more or less kill their time, or what you call stagnate them, or put them on a mental treadmill so that they can be sacrificed later, because they're going to have to go to their divine mind in order to solve problems. Belief systems, as we have been taught, never did work for humanity. However, they were a source of social solace by design, to comfort a body of people who have been devoured, or would you say defeated. And so the dogma systems of the social solace systems, this is where the origin of them being promoted as religion from a sociological point of view, that's how that evolved. But nevertheless, it has become an artificial reality among our people, and that artificial reality must be dissolved in order for our people to start dealing with the true sciences of nature, so that we can start fixing society here at Midgard. And so, we're really having a purging that must take place. And again, while we're having this casual discussion about the lordship of the executors, lordship of maintaining hell on at Midgard, because that's essentially what they've been doing, and we need to kind of have a less emotional conversation about it, a less emotional view, and a more metaphysical, scientific, and actual political, geopolitical analysis of what's really going on so that we can start constructing solutions and begin to trust ourselves that among us, there are capable ones. However, and I know that you all are thinking some of these things, our difficulties have been as the people reawakening, finding honorable men and women who are not just competent in their Gnostic basis, but in their sincere honor and integrity on actually helping to clean up Midgard, because it's a job for everyone, you know, because every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own in this Aquarian light, and that's just simply the truth. And I think because the people have been geared or groomed into this sacrificial lamb type mentality, they're still looking for, this sacrificial Jesus image or Serapis image that they can sacrifice, on an altar to cover up for the sin of ignorance type stuff. And the deal of his nature is not allowing that, and you must be aware of that.
There's a brother here, Eritrean here in the House of Reawakening, and I can't call his name because everything there looks like it's written in hieroglyph. But just to acknowledge, because you talk a lot about Eritrea, and Saba and so forth. So we recognize you, brother. Just can't say your appellation with that. But let me just see if there's anything else. If there are any questions, if you have questions that that are relevant, that you want to, no personal questions, like no help me out with this problem questions, but general questions that you would like to ask Grand Sheik, if you mind. I'm trying to scroll through the comments to see if there are any specific questions that need to be answered that are not personal in nature, but more of a general nature.
The other thing too, Dr. Naila, if we could get the people just beginning, and they're doing it truthfully because they really are, to start thinking again. Yeah. The solutions are in them. But people have been trained for so many generations by the priesthood not to believe in themselves, not to trust themselves, and to keep looking for so we're creatures of habit. And they're depending on people maintaining the habits that they've been trained in for generations to keep looking to the priesthood, not knowing that the priesthood was really the vampire. And this is again why the dark priesthood has been successful, because they've been playing the vicar. That's why it's important. Explain to them people the vicar, please, Dr. Naila.
The vicar means the substitute.
So if it's a substitute, it's also a placebo, isn't it?
Right. It means according to them, and I'm looking over there, I have the catechism. I'm sure it's a little brown book. I have a catechism book over there, but in particular, in the catechisms, one of the things they'll say, for instance, who changed the Sabbath to Sunday? And they said, we did.
The vicars.
The vicars did. We made the Sabbath Sunday.
So what did they do? They contaminated, didn't they?
Yes.
And they don't deny it. They don't deny it.
Well, we didn't read, so they can put everything in the book and tell the truth and absolve themselves of karma.
From a karmic perspective,
Yeah.
This is the reason why when you're dealing with jurisprudence, they will always say things like that the people keep consenting to be their slave. Mm-hmm. And then the people won't take responsibility that they're consenting. And therefore, they're in contempt. They're due to the contempt that the personating judges or personating gods have a right to meet sovereign punishments upon them and to steal their estates. And so this is where you get the contempt that is expressed by a lot of people in government against the people. They're actually contemptuous of the people because the people keep defending their ignorance. And then the people keep on supporting or voting for the demons, democracy, demons, and then complaining about the results. You know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Um, Immoral, yes. Unethical, yes. But the deal is what we're also seeking is the people to start taking responsibility. Not because we're suggesting, because really they're going to have to discover either willingly or not that they will be taking responsibility one way or another. You either take responsibility or become sacrificed. Rough, but kind of fair.
Let me see what we got here. Let me see. I did see a question up here. Let me see if I can go back there. Da, 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 da. Here's DJ Red says, I really just want to know if we are the Aboriginal people or original people.
Aboriginal, ab means first.
First and from.
And you can say original, yes. It still means you're really both. Because aboriginal means the first.
Okay. All right. Here's another. Did I miss the cell memory and how to activate the knowledge meditation? I don't think we did that. Um, let me see. Yeah, we'll be putting out the information for the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we're going to have to, because the deal of it is, you know, the dark priesthood is attacking truth like a wild wolf right now. You know, as the world is reawakening, they are upping their game. Biological warfare, viral warfare, political warfare, psychological warfare, military warfare, economic warfare, sociological engineering warfare, which they've been doing all the time. It's just that they're not wasting time setting up smokescreen programs like they used to. They're just being blunt. And so this is, you know, some people are uncomfortable with it, but it's not new. It's just that the priesthood's masks are off. Remember we were saying the last few years, all masks are off. And because the people could see it if they were willing, you know. It's just that it's going to become more and more undeniable by them and also by you. So what you going to do? Because that's basically where we at right now.
Yeah, let me see. Okay. Ready to transfer. Word Sheila, Dr. G, I ask if crystals are good to have. They are very healing to me. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's just that you have to make sure you have the right crystal for you.
So now you're going back to the culture,
right? You also need to know that you don't have crystals that counteract and conflict with each other. So crystals are good, which kind of, you know, one of the things I have in mind for my little auction is a book about crystals. I mean, it's cards on crystals, but yes, crystals generally are good. You just need to make sure. And I don't know why I don't list and show people all the crystals that I have down here. All of those are crystals, and
oh yeah,
I need to make.
You know, a lot of stuff you had for years, and you just
those I have.
No, but the ones you talked about that you
got,
had, you told me about the ones you had under your bed for years.
Well, yeah, I didn't know what they were. Yeah. I had a big old conflict going on right there. I do sleep better now that the box of I had like I don't know 50 different crystals in a box that I had stuck under the bed.
Yeah, but you want to kind of separate them.
Yeah, so because all clash. Crystals are not created equal for whatever purposes you need. So make sure everybody has some sage though.
So now,
look, you said everybody should have sage or Palo Santo.
Yeah.
Clearance. Anyway.
Well, again, isn't it back to the culture that already was?
Yeah.
But the deal of is having a comprehension of why your forefathers did certain things.
Yes.
Because they're harmonic with nature.
Absolutely.
And then you start recognizing that they were given negative connotations by the hybrids for you to abandon them. Then they gave you idol gods in place of it that's been destroying you. There you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What we did worked. What we had was what we
Mm-hmm.
needed.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to get back there. That's the thing that's going to defeat the opportunity, the
Yes.
actions and the all of the operations that have been put in place against us.
Yeah, the
You know,
exploiters,
that's how you can say
the vampires.
remember the biblical thing: no weapon formed against you shall
Yes.
prosper. I mean, you got to have the right tools in order to defend yourself.
And it's always been around you. It's not like, what do we do? I mean, how we continuously use our Bibles and our Qurans and Waspis and Torahs, etc., to express the culture and then don't study the culture from what all these books come from. It's almost like they speak of it and then, it's sort of like you look the image and don't live the image. And because everybody's doing that, thinking that we're doing our deed type thing. Just like like Dr. Naila, like you talk about, like people keep talking about church. And if you ask the average person who's been going to churches most of their life what church is, they'll start telling you it's the building.
Yeah,
and don't know that it's an abstract of the great astrological or circle.
Well, the very thing that church denounces,
is what church is. Is what church is.
That is funny.
And this is why, and I think more now people can comprehend when we be saying or making a statement. Many people have gone to those buildings, but very few people have ever been to church. And yet the priests have known that, and it was the priests who have been doing that to them.
Now, I had a conversation with another sort of kind of former pastor who had listened to you talk about all pastors, all priests, all whatever know this, and he and I, this was just like yesterday, maybe, or the day before yesterday. It was in the last 2 days, and he was a little offended because he said he didn't know, and I said, "Don't be offended.
There's no need to be offended."
Well, I didn't know because when we say we didn't know, there are. I told him you have to be pretty high up though. When you get into these mega things, mega congregations and so forth, there's no way you get there unless you definitely know. And then the others of us stumble like I did on the truth, or awakened by the truth,
and then turn a blind eye because they're vested, like you always say.
Either you turn a blind eye or you do what I did do and you step out on the truth. I turned my back on fraud.
What you knew was what you learned was fraud.
I had to. But others won't do it. They'll know it. Those are the ones when you say when they find out.
Now, and I say this, and
I
say this. This is what I say. You know how like when we're discussing some things that we're doing around, physically, on a carpentry level, and a construction level, and a basic structural physics engineering level, and like for instance, when you're sitting here. And I was building them shelves, and the shelves being squared and level and plumb in their structure exposed actually the warpage in the walls that otherwise you didn't notice.
No.
But it's not something that we weren't, from an engineering perspective, actually dealing with from the time that we started doing work on this house, correcting. But when you start seeing the squares and the angles. Just like you can look up there, right? And a person who doesn't understand structure looks at it one way, but someone who understands structure already understand that he definitely doesn't have kiln dried lumber in there, and that they got rid of a lot of their trash, if you get the whole point. Or you could tell that they were flipping; they weren't trying to really make something proper. And the reason I'm saying that is to say this. You know how like like being a barber, right? And my father was a barber. Over the years, when you're dealing with hair, you're dealing with bone structure. You actually deal with a study from a doctor's point of view, right? When you're studying cosmetology, And the test that you would take would be in a doctorate level for germicides, fungus, hair texture, looking at how hair grows from the crown, etc., different textures. And as you deal with these things over the years, by virtue of what you do, you learn also, not just from the established literary structured literary learning of both biological and structure, hair structure and follicles, etc. You learn from experience. And the reason I've always said that, how like so someone's working with carpentry for years and you work in different types of buildings, you begin to learn certain structures, even though technically when you're dealing with blueprint reading and carpentry principles and angles and cuts and complex angles, etc., and wood densities based on hardwoods to softwoods, common woods, less common woods, rare woods, how they're used, what situations you would use them in, certain situations you would not use them in, thicknesses, widths of wood used in different structures for different purposes, whether in joist, as an example, or in rafters, etc. So by default, you learn certain things. So I've always said this, and what I recognize over the years, like say, if someone is over the years studying the Bible, as an example, and they've literally made a business out of it, and they've been collecting finance from people over the years, and they get degrees. And if you're studying, we're not talking about people who are playing these emotional games, pretending to be so-called erudite. But if you're studying, there's no way you can study the Bible and not learn Septuagintus. They're your first Bibles. You see what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you see me will say when people, if someone's just talking casually on the corner or something like that, right? You can kind of give them a little leeway. But when someone puts up a sign and takes on a title of imam, pastor, rabbi, bishop, reverend, those titles are PhDs. All those titles are adepts. And so if you say you're a carpenter and someone charges you with violating the use of a saw, then you say, well, some of us don't know what a saw is. If you said you're a carpenter, you can be held to having the responsibility to know what a saw and a hammer is. And so I say, anyone who studies religion and gets into it and makes it a business, and you've been in it for years, these things come across your path by default. Now, what you find is that when people start discovering these things, what they do is they start looking at the sociological positions that they're in, the vestments that they're in, the finance and the schoolings that they paid for, the buildings that they mortgaged, and etc. And they make decisions that if they tell the truth, the stuff collapses. And that's what I'm saying when I say that they know, because it's like you can't not know. It's like you can't become a diver and a swimmer and never heard of H2O, never know what current is, don't know what tides are, as an example, if you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't know that water's wet. Well, I ain't playing that game no more. And I think because over the years we've been always making excuses for people is another reason why we're where we are right now. A robber don't know he robbing you, but he always happens to rob you, but he never gives it back. Well, he didn't know he was robbing me. Well, stop. This is where I am with that. That's why I say that.
Okay.
Because by default you learn, if you get the point. If you're involved in it, by default you learn. And we need, if somebody say they're a surgeon and they've been cutting people's heads, hold them to their claim. They put a sign out there and they took a penny. If they took a penny, they're responsible. And it's called the rule of color. And the rule of color in law has always been this: No one who rules in government, no one who takes a position of authority or takes a position of trust can ever say they do not know the law, for it is their responsibility by organized principle to take an oath on the very principles of law that they are held in trust to do. Therefore, ignorance of the law is never excused, and particularly for anyone who takes a position of rulership. Therefore, the priesthood is not forgiven. They can forgive themselves, but the divine does not forgive.
Here's a question, kind of heavy, and I've gotten a lot of calls on this type of subject.
Oh, I can understand it.
Scroogy Doyle wants to know, what do you do if your spouse is ignorant, willingly so, but there is a child involved? Should one leave to pursue this calling to truth?
Keep this in mind. The willingness to leave should be converted into the willingness to teach. That's my answer.
Makes sense. You know, I tell people, because I get a lot of calls where they'll say, you know, my significant other, my maid or something, they totally aren't for it. Had a conversation today with someone who says they would never, they're probably on here, never marry because they can't find any. They wouldn't
I can understand that too.
Find someone who would understand, and this is, so important to them. But I always say, if you're in a relationship and your significant other and the family members and whatever aren't for it, that doesn't mean that you stop your pursuit of knowledge. Because you came in here by yourself. You don't necessarily have to leave, but you need to be able to pursue your study, because there is somebody out there who's going to want to listen to you. It may not be in your household, but
isn't this interesting how what we're really discussing right now in this instance is the result of truth not being exposed. And it's a result of the contamination of humanity done by the priesthood by design. How we handle it is going to be determined by each of us in our own circumstance. You also may have to look at, and I don't promote it, but I comprehend what's going on. You know how, like the Septuagint say, if your right arm offend you, cut it off. But if you choose to do so, make sure that you do everything with moral, fair, and balanced determination. That there be no karmic response, in the sense that it is not predicated on any selfish or unfair motive. However, the other problem, because these are real problems that people are dealing with, because these what you call destructive platforms, even in social relationships, were by design. And again, if we're not willing to start telling the truth, this stuff is going to fall apart anyway. So my position is, look, you're in a battle that you're going to lose if you don't fix it. So if you're going to get robbed, put up a fight. That's my point. Because you're dealing with spiritual and physical robbery right now, and it's becoming open, meaning they're not even playing put the glove on anymore. They just walk you up, punch you right in the eye, and take your stuff, and then claim to be your government.
Now, I'm not sure.
And don't care whether you recognize it or not. Meanwhile, they're willing to kill you off and your children as you become less useful to them, which is really what they're doing. So now what you going to do?
I don't know whether I missed this question or if this is the question, because the person, this Knee Relief Chronicle, is saying, Dr. G, please answer question. Didn't say ask. Answer question about wooden energy totem and violent trauma spots of hybrids killing Moors like early 1900s Niagara Falls massacre. I
Yeah,
don't know whether,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know whether there was a question asked
because
earlier.
it's a structure. It's kind of, you know, the way it's structured. You don't know whether it's a
I
question
don't
or a
know
statement.
whether they're saying I asked the question up here and you missed it.
Well,
You answered it. I didn't
well,
see it, so you'd have to put it back
from
in.
implications, from what I'm reading from implications, this is for people who may not get it. Many of the matriarchs, and we in general, um, in the land of Nod, and in the upper reaches of the atomic lakes, would meditate, would use those areas for meditation. Um, and so the Niagara Falls area, or coming off the lakes, etc., was where, for thousands of years, we had our meetings, confederations, and meditations, etc., on multiple levels. It's just simply a social part of our structure here, which is also why the hybrids focused on murdering or sacrificing a lot of the Moabitises there, killing off the matriarchy. Um, and a lot of the hybrids would mock it by saying they would call Niagara Falls Nigger Falls, etc. You know, where they chop their heads off, steal their gold, their silver, stuff like that, and throw them over the falls. And as you know, with the rebellion that took place in that area, this is where the hybrids also corrupted the history of the massacre in that area, and that's where they started with some persons claiming to be Jews, but not Jews, who took over and converted the Niagara movement into what is known as the NAACP,
Yeah.
and coloring our people and putting them under a color of law. And this is why you see persons who are part of that platform of thinking refer to our people as persons of color, part of the priesthood spell cast. So let's go into the law and see what they mean by people of color, or colored people, colored persons. And this is back to maintenance of hell on earth. And this is where, you know, they keep doing this conversion, or telling or saying things to mean something that they do not mean, and then our people take it and actually are casting spells on themselves and don't know that they're casting spells on themselves. And this is again why we do what we do. Color, and then we're going to go into colored. So when you're talking about the social engineering of the executors and the Roman Curia members who took over the movement of Niagara, and includes the nature of, so that people could understand the operations of the executors' operations, what they did when they did the bombing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to steal the wealthy bank of the Moors, the last vestige of the wealthy banks, when they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let's deal with colored. Now, color, when they call our people people of color, color is a semblance, a simulacrum, or a simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real. I repeat, color means an appearance, a semblance, or simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie, or an apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible, assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality. Colored. By common usage in America, so they're giving you geographical, political, jurisdictional operations. By common usage in America, this term, colored, in such phrases as quote unquote colored persons, quote unquote the colored race, quote unquote colored men, and the like, is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood descendant from Negro ancestry, etc. But where the state constitution provided for separate schools for the white and colored races, notice that these are terms, social terms, the term white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term quote unquote colored races quote unquote was held to embrace all other races. And then they will give you law case references in relationship to arguments brought before the court. And it has been held that it has been held that there is no legal, technical signification to the phrase, quote unquote, colored persons, which the court are bound judicially to know. So that means from a position of law, the court don't even acknowledge it because it's a social engineering term and it's a fraud and it's a fake. And it deals with artificial persons, maskings, prima facie semblances distinguished from that which is real and is used to cover up or to color an issue or being. There you go. And so when they took over the Niagara movement, they covered it up with a whole new reconstructed sociological paradigm called colored persons. Now, doesn't that also fit the paradigm of them operating with the straw, man of straw, 14th Amendment concept of the monkey, Negro, troglodyte nigger, sociology, and claiming it to be a part of the human race when in fact it deals with the Pangidae, hybrid Anthropopithecus, and we accept it as African identity, which had absolutely nothing to do with, but had to do with social engineering. So you can look at their administration and maintenance of hell on earth, because you have a whole multiple layers of generations of people that think that when someone says persons of color, that they're doing you some kind of metaphysical favor of Afrocentric spirituality when they just called you a fake artificial person outside of the human family. And it's been controlled since 1909 under what is called the NAACP and has been promoted for generations as a liberation front when actually it's a front of covering up the history and the loss of a state of the Aboriginal people, particularly in that territory.
Okay.
And
Missy B. Wiggins says her family thinks she's going to hell because she doesn't go to church anymore.
Well, we just told you what hell is.
Yeah.
And we're all in hell, and they are too.
Let me just see if there are any.
And tell the go to Law Dictionary and learn what hell really is. We just told you what it is. So go back and review, and then do your research and share that with your family. You know, because they need to know. And also, with with people having difficulty with their family members who think they have been to church, give them this. You do the research and share with them and give them this question. Ask them to not give you an emotional or judgmental response, but to tell the truth and give you, written by their own hands, an explanation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed that they have been promoting in the name of the church.
Here's a question. Certain hybrid Europeans, possibly justifiably labeled as sovereign citizens within their respective venues discussing quote unquote all things law, frequently self-proclaim and essentially confer nationality upon themselves, renouncing their current citizenship status and self-proclaim to be Americans. When privileged to be party and observer of these discussions, is it necessary to attempt to correct them and rebut their claims as being such, and also provide them an alternative remedy?
Well, the remedy was already in place. Wasn't the remedy in place with the treaties that they breached before being brought into the constitutional fold of government? Isn't part of the problems, and aren't many of the problems that they're experiencing now because they breached the Constitution, which includes the treaties that supersede the Constitution, as expressed in Article 3 and Article 6, and that in fact they know that they are hybrids. Now that's not a negative for them, but aren't they descendants of colonists at America? And didn't they stop telling the people the truth? And now it is the lies and the misrepresentation that have been presented for the reconstruction operations against Aboriginal people, and particularly expressed in the philosophy page of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates operations and Skull and Bones operations, expressed via the General Education Board of 1902. And those of you who are sharing here with us tonight at House of Reawakening Minds, when you get a chance, you can go in the public record and look at the philosophy page of the General Education Board, and you can see how they used docility operations as a weapon against us. Now the problem that they have is the lies that they have told is now destroying them. So you see a lot of the hybrid Europeans are trying to tell a lot of the truths to save their estates. But are the estates that they're trying to save theirs, or is that stolen estates under colonial operations? So again, let's go to Webster's dictionary, right? And it's for those who don't know, let's see who the Americans are. And I comprehend why you're saying what you're saying, but the conditions of what's taking place on the planet right now, it kind of sort of like a oxymoron in the social engineering paradigm. They lied and told the people that America's a country, America's a continent. Is that correct? So it's opposite, right? But they do and formulated a private human trafficking corporation in Austria called Trading American Trading Company, right? Now, so they've been promoting since 1861 that their corporation is the country that the operatives of their corporation colonized and have been systematically through the Roman Curia members of the Circle Church and Chancery of the Bar Association, British Accredited Registry, have been overthrowing the Republic, of which they have been profitable members. And you have a whole so-called bevy of so-called barratry law firms across the land that's been privateering and raping the people economically to this very day. Is that not true? It certainly is. Then you have a bunch of POW camps that are run by them. They've been packing the prisons with our people. to the tune of 80 to 90%. Isn't that true also? So now that many of them are being sacrificed by the dark priesthood who are being dismantled, etc., so they want to make this sovereign citizen argument. Well, they're not citizens of a country, they're citizens of the corporation. Because the people of the land would be known as nationals. Internationally, when you're dealing with categories of citizens, and you all can look this up, it will be categorized from AA, which would be the nationals. Then you have A1 to A19, which would be citizens and persons of alien status on different purposes of operating or doing business territorially or in jurisdictional operations of any particular nation state. So, which are they? Because they certainly ain't Americans if they are hybrid Europeans. So, American, a native of America originally. If it's originally, it still is. Originally applied to the aboriginal or copper colored races. So they used to do the paper bag test, the brown paper bag test, and they used to do the copper penny test to exclude the true Americans from the benefits of organized government since they were colonizing us. Uh, so now they're claiming to be the copper complexion, swarthy people. Who are the Americans? Are they the Aboriginal? If they're not the Aboriginal, can they be Americans? Uh, let logic answer that question. So you need not argue with anyone to argue about who Americans are. You just need to get our people to stop claiming to be somebody that they're not and to claim their birthright and start help fixing this thing. Now, for them, and sovereign citizen is an oxymoron because the citizen is a person of the corporate construct. Now, they can be a civilian. Now, then you got to name who that civilian is because at any given time you may have, according to A1 to A19, different peoples of different nation states territorially operating anywhere on the planet as it always has been. And then so you'll be arguing what their nationality is. Now, do you hear anyone in Africa on that side of Africa talking about the African sovereign or African nation? African's a continent. And then you have multiple jurisdictions of tribes and nation states at that particular jurisdictional territory. Same thing goes with Europe. Same thing goes with Asia. So in a way, it gives presents the dynamics and the paradigms for multiple levels of studying to dissect the artificiality of the social engineering that's operative right now. And so when you see them talking about American or sovereign citizen, if you imply citizen, citizen would imply nation state. So now in national and international law, you must name the nation. And the United States is not a nation. The United States is a corporation that's also bankrupt. So this is why when you look at legislation under the board of directors for the United States Corporation, that U.S. citizens can't contest their operations. Why? Because they are citizens and beneficiaries of the constructed fraud. So you can't be that and contest it. That's the fact. That's why they're trying to claim to be Americans. But if they're Americans, now are they Moors? If they ain't Moors, they can't claim to be Americans. They're in a conundrum right now, aren't they? And so is our people. This is part of what we together must start working out in our social relationships with each other to start cleaning up Midgard, because this is part of the problems of them managing hell at Midgard. So this social corruption, and social solace systems, and the institutions that have been put in place, and the misclassifications of citizenships, and the alterations of the Nationalization Act by Grant 1790, etc., when they altered that, also with the Horace Greeley operations at Philadelphia with the convention of the Whigamores and the Cottonwigs and the Conscience Whigs deciding to call the hybrid descendants of Europeans, hybrid Europeans, white people, which is a legal status that did not belong to them. Now, all of those chickens, like Brother Malcolm said, are coming home to roost because they've been going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, and now they've lost their sovereignty. However, to claim sovereignty, you must be what? You must be in divine order, in harmony with nature's law and nature's God, as expressed in the Declaration of Independence, as expressed in its being adopted from the Aboriginal people, with divine hermetic principles of law and governance, etc., that they have pretty much rejected in their processes of robbing us, the Aboriginal people, who they branded Negroes, blacks, and coloreds and Latinos. And now they want to be sovereign. They can't be sovereign unless they're home. So when you're talking anywhere on at Midgard in a jurisdictional issue relative to impropria persona principle, can't be impropria persona and then claim to be something that you're not. The same way that our people cannot be impropria persona, claim to be somebody that they're not. So you don't have to tell them what you need to do, and what we all need to do is start fixing our family members who are still in that gray area of fear of being themselves because these same Romans keep doing stuff to them. And this is part of the social fabric that's actually falling apart here at North America. So actually look at it as an issue on the table of social studies. Because in studying it, we can correct a lot of things among our people because it gives you insight to what they're dealing with now. Just like a lot of law cases, whereas they're being sued, they're instituting Federal Rule 12b-6, diversity of nationality when it's convenient for them, but you don't see them teaching that to our people, do you? So take that in consideration. I yield the floor.
Sherry Lynn says, I thought the U.S. was dissolved on January 20th, 2021 at 12 noon.
U.S. was dissolved 1861. You know, I'm just showing you how their corruption continues, and they keep kicking what they call kicking the can down the road. They keep on violating the treaties and violating Constitution, and then keep on operating under color while calling everyone else colored. You know, just like we talk about, you know, so many people make not that it's not valid. They'll make, you know, the economic corruption here. They'll keep talking about Jekyll Island and then not talk about the coup d'etat in 1861. You see the point? The Organic Act of Congress. And then they'll keep talking about Washington, D.C. being the Capitolium when they know that the Capitolium was Shekamoxon.
Another question, though.
Go ahead.
Sherry Lynn says, where is home for them?
Home for them is accepted by virtue of naturalization, which is why Naturalization Act was set up in the first place.
So, I mean, where's the physical location? I mean, like they're from?
Physical location, they were given or ceded territory by the Druids in Ingla land.
Who were the Druids?
The Druids was Naga Moors.
But we never see that when you see the
No, you don't.
depiction.
No, you don't.
No.
And so
Stonehenge and all that.
That's stuff. Exactly correct. And you will have energy centers all around the planet that's like Stonehenge. That's not the only place. They don't tell you because they want you to think that these operations on this planet, Midgard, is younger or earlier to justify the idol god system structures that they created for the priesthood to control and subjugate humanity when we've been here for millions of years, and that's the fact. And logically, when the real history comes out, as it comes out, all of these the game God games that they've been playing over humanity will logically, by virtue of reality, collapse. And then the people will understand why the metaphor, the anthropomorphic Jesus reminded the people that you are all gods. And we got that to look into, don't we?
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, I want to thank you all for, coming here, sharing this night with us at the House of Reawakening Minds. And we are doing what we can intelligently and with comprehension of the wars being waged against us to try to share with you, to uplift the people as best that we're able, and encouraging you to do the same, and encouraging you to love one another and do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And the House of Reawakening Minds is here to support you. And so we ask you to support the House of Reawakening Minds to keep this platform viable and functional in spite of all the resistance and how would you say war attacks, direct and indirect. Nations states around the world have been suffering from that same paradigm, etc. So we're sharing with you some fundamental truths and suggesting you research and affirm them, being legitimate and true for your own benefit, the benefit of your families, etc., and understand the fundamental principles that you've been told over the years about the principle of communication, of implied contracts, or linear contracts, or unconscionable contracts, etc. What affirms a contract as being valid, or what a contract is at all, and fundamental civics, which involves the fundamental principles of government structure and the nature of government or government bodies politics, and particularly persons holding any position or office in government, office of trust, and their relationship to the nationals of the land or the citizens of the land in contract relative to treaties and constitutions, which would be categorized in the same class, and the limitations of government, etc. Therefore, it's important for people to recognize and comprehend that any agency or any agency of government or any persons operating any branch of government, etc., or any corporate activities coming under the authority of any government must indeed be a creature of the Constitution. Now, that's the fact. Keeping that in mind, we want to present to you a couple of questions for you to contemplate, etc., relative to taxes and debt. And Dr. Naila, we were talking earlier about some things, and let's interject and share some things with us, to help us along in our analyzing the social economic problems that are taking place today at Midgard.
Well, what I'd like to interject is what we were talking about. I had shared with you, and you're familiar with the author Peter Moon.
Oh yes, yes, I know him
And
personally.
yeah, and in his book, the Montauk Book of the Dead, at the very beginning, as a matter of fact, probably in the introduction of the book, may I share a paragraph?
Share some with us. Yeah.
It says, let's see, there are also many other. Let me just. I think that one of the easiest ways to explain the principle of death is through the archetypal images used in astrology. In that reference frame, death is assigned to the eighth house of the zodiac, which is the constellation known as Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
This sign not only represents death, but also sex, regeneration, and taxation.
Mm-hmm.
In astrology, subjects such as accounting, sex, including the sex trade, and morticians are ruled by Scorpio. This is particularly interesting When you consider that, conspiracy theorists will tell you, not incorrectly, that populations are controlled and manipulated through sex, death, and taxation. The Catholic Church is an excellent example in this regard. They tell people how and when to have sex and seek compliance through the threat of eternal damnation. Taxation comes in the form of tithes, but also in payments for dispensation and absolution. And I think, that there is a far reaching, I guess, application,
yes, of that
of what you're
in
talking
society.
yeah, in society, and how it has framed where we are today.
Yeah, and a lot of people, don't relate to these what you would say metaphors that are presented in the Bible as an example, and in the Quran, etc., in relationship to the operations of the dark priesthood relative to the Rome, etc., and injuries that they have caused on the planet, etc., and upon humanity. And then you also take into account a lot of the hybrid Europeans who've been occupying our land, the descendants under colonial operations, uh, starting different venues where they're exposing a lot of these truths themselves, particularly since in their caste system that was set up by the U.S. corporation operators and owners, what they refer to, part of their hegemony operations, they refer to as the so-called middle class. And as they recognize that they are being economically and politically sacrificed, etc.,